Hey everyone, Walter Crosby with Helix Sales Development, another episode of Sales and Cigars. Today, my guest is a client. He's becoming a friend, and sort of we see the world through a similar lens. We've experienced some of the same types of challenges in our life. There's a lot more in common than there isn't. He's just a lot freaking taller than me. Colson Steber runs a couple of organizations, CFR and Ag Access. It's a little esoteric a business that is kind of complex. We get into explaining what that is, but we talk about entrepreneurship today. So if you're an entrepreneur at some point in your journey, whether it's at the beginning, the middle, or towards the end, there's pieces of this that are going to relate. There's some insights there that the two of us share. I think that can help anybody that's on a journey thinking about starting a business or in the middle of it. It's just a fun conversation. So go grab a cocktail, go grab a cigar, strap in for another episode of Sales and Cigars. Thanks. So Colson, I appreciate you taking some time out of your busy week to jump on the podcast with me. So thanks.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
So, a little disclosure statement that you and I have been working together for, 9 months or so now? 10 months? Something like that?
Coming up on a year.
Yeah, because it was March. So I have a little bit of insight into your company, and what I'd love to do is start off. You have an interesting story. You're an entrepreneur in the truest sense, and you're a visionary in the truest sense. So can you talk a little bit about your journey? We don't need to go to kindergarten, but pick it up where you think it was informative to where we are today.
Started out as a kid, no. I definitely just struggled with the idea that I would have to, on a long-term basis, do anything repeatedly, and thought that I needed to actually own my own business and see that challenge, and had the fortunate experience of having been in fourth grade when my parents started a business and watching that that transformation that they went through and the hard work that they put in. So after college, where I had done business degrees and did a lot of extra finance, since everybody always says if you're going to own a business, you better understand the money. I was definitely wayfinding and joined this company 11 years ago. It was actually 11 years ago as of 3 days from now. And that was my dad's company. And then the journey would be that it's never as, it was a lot harder than it actually seems it's going to be. So those first 4.5 years were very much marked by tumultuous stress, and then that resulted in myself and my business partner Curtis buying the company in May of 16. And the next 3 years would meet the definition of entrepreneurial poverty, where we had nothing but trading our time for money, and or had our hands in absolutely everything, just trying to make it happen so that we could possibly make payroll every and hit our debt payment on time, which through many trials and tribulations, we never missed payroll or a debt payment, fortunately, because when it turned for us in the third quarter of 2019, we actually kind of have never turned back. So I feel like we're in what I feel like is the second phase of the entrepreneurial journey, where we actually know what our business model is and how we meet the market, what our actual value add is, and how we're different, and we're working to actually put process in place and build the team that delivers on that. And so I think this year is about like bringing that marketing, sales, and ops lockstep to really fulfilling that vision that we've been working to optimize against for 4 years. And it is a very, very scalable business once we reach that. So hopefully after this year, we'll be in phase 3, and the goal is to 10x the company over the next decade.
Like I said, I have a little insight to this, and I don't think somebody really can say they understand what it is to own a business or run and operate if they've never had to make payroll. And if you've never sweated that once or twice or 20 times, it's a real thing. It builds character. It makes you think. It motivates. It creates discipline. It does all of those things that entrepreneurs, develop. Some of us do it faster than others, but so you build that structure, and you got people. You got the structure there. Your operating system, and there's always like this sine wave that we're riding as we ride up in our revenue and our growth, and we're just trying to make sure that those sine waves don't become too high and too deep as we're moving along. I'm always interested in, because you're the visionary in the moniker of visionary, we're using EOS parlance. So how do you see yourself, or how have you seen that grow from taking that idea guy, the person that sees this vision and may see that vision better than other folks, to making shit get done and making it happen and translating that vision to other people? That's a smooth, easy process, right? There's no bumps there.
Wish. Yeah, something I often say that I feel like is right along with what you just said before I answer your question is that entrepreneurial life is the greatest self-development tool that exists in the world, if you're listening, because there's real life consequences to the decisions I make. There's a disproportionate amount of power that I have, and like there's actual measurable financial outcomes as well as people outcomes that if you're paying attention, like what you do really matters. And you also have a vehicle through the business in which to actually invest back into yourself so that you can meet that challenge. And
Mm-hmm.
I'd say that kind of gets into answering the question of how do you go from idea guy to implementation. Like I am an insane optimizer of like how do I manage myself. So I mean, first and foremost, like there's definitely the transition in 2019 from entrepreneurial poverty to like where I am today is very much based off of this deeply feeling that uh, the the amount that the business can grow and even continue to exist, because it was significantly in question, is based upon how much I grow as an individual. The main thing that happens when you are like watching whether a check comes in every single day in the mail is that you realize that if you aren't going to die from the stress, then it must be because like you need to actually detach your identity from the business.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have to figure out like, I am not the business, but am I, and like, am I willing to do what I need to do to actually be the source of this changing? And my answer obviously to that has been yes, and I am like willing to figure out how I take what seems to make perfect sense to me and is ridiculously complex to everyone else, and turn it into something that uh, like can actually be a team can be built around, and the business can actually operate.
But you're at the phase where you've done that. Cons- you're essentially have that in place. There's tweaks that need to be done. There's a little still optimization. We never stop, I think, trying to improve internally as well as providing an experience for our customers and our clients. But that along that way, you're constantly. I'm not going to say reinventing ourselves, but we're constantly learning, and to me, that's why I enjoy working with entrepreneurs. Is that we're always investing in ourselves. Like if I said, "Hey, what book are you reading right now?" to an entrepreneur or somebody like yourself, there's probably two or three that you're working on in the moment, or you've just finished and you're trying to implement. There's always something. There's coaching programs. I know that you're constantly looking at that. Is that a theme that you see across other entrepreneurs that you engage with, other people that you run into, in from organizations that you belong to? That there's a desire, or is that just the nature of who you want to associate with? That those people are constant learners.
Yeah, I mean it's some of both. I've a big part of not feeling so lonely and finding my own path was to figure out where would I get to circles of people that are like 10 or 20 years ahead of me, and there's at least pieces of what like their current experiences that are representative of like where I would like to be, so that I can and from that perspective, I mean, I am a pretty insane content junkie, but I have like actually found others that are pushing like themselves as much as what I am. I want to be so far out at the edge of my own personal capacity that every single 90 days I genuinely have to do the reset of taking the time to figure out what I should be doing with my time, because it changes definitely within the 90-day period. And then that I'm growing so fast as a person that I don't recognize myself of 6 or 12 months ago. And and I falsely believed earlier in my days that like there is a ceiling that can get reached, but I've just I'm now much more accepting that a huge thing for me is that like the least risky thing that I can do is bet on myself,
Hmm.
particularly at this point because I've been like pushing my own self so hard for so long that like I'm doing really great, and it just is a matter of like if I I keep on growing in ways that I don't even know are possible because I'm at the edge.
And like you said, that's hard to see when you're in it.
Right.
So you take those reflective breaks, um, to recognize it, and there's got to be some self gratification, or like just being having gratitude about what's going on around you, right? The people that are there, the structure, the your partners, right? All of that. But I think we got to look as entrepreneurs, look at ourselves and it's like, what did we accomplish? What was the
Mhm.
good? Because if we just focus on like the negative, um, yeah, I've been working on some things internally, and I've realized that I've always focused on that negative thing. Like, what did I miss? What
Right.
wasn't working? And that causes a lot of problems. Um, internal relationships, relationships within the organization, personal relationships. So that's something that you've gotten better at, realizing that to look at what you've accomplished, look at the growth, and then go work on the things that we can get better. But accept the fact that we did grow and we did make improvements, and the company is getting better, and I'm learning. That's a big challenge that maybe 5-6 years ago was a harder thing to do. Is that fair?
Um, I mean, 5, 6 years ago, I was, you know, suicidal and extremely depressed and anxious was my name, and I basically escaped at every turn to deal with how much pressure I felt. So, um, in the last 12 to 15 months, yeah, probably 15 months now, like I had definitely incorporated many kind of tools and practices that were along the ilk of what you're talking about. Um, and I experienced a lot more joy and felt a lot more contentment. But as life would throw in unexpected things, or for entrepreneurs like me, right? Like I would mistakenly have overcommitted myself, and then the overwhelm would start. It's been about like tying back. Now I'm in a different program called Strategic Coach, where I do and a fundamental uh, like out of that is this thing called the gap in the gain, and it is literally about and I spend a lot of time. The gap is where you are compared to the ideal, where you always see the horizon line and you see those gaps, and the gain is where you are compared to the progress that you made. And I've just gotten way more serious over the last 15 months of having so many ways in which I'm checking in on, I'm doing the things I said I wanted to be doing. I'm making progress from where I was towards where I want to go. Yes, it's a meandering path, blah, 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 but that's the journey, and I should respect the journey. I should enjoy the journey. I can get caught in dream world where I want my vision to already have happened, and it's not, and I get too caught up in it. You experienced that with me last year. Um,
A little bit.
where I got so caught up in where I wanted to be that I wasn't like paying enough attention to where I was and the incremental progress that needed to be made. So there's, as I said, there's always actually more lessons to be learned than we realize even exist.
Well, that's true, and I think if we take a step back through that, what you're talking about, entrepreneurial visionaries, entrepreneurs in general, we jump on a path because we know we're unemployable when it comes down to it. We really couldn't just go work for somebody anymore. It's just the way our brain works. And we jump on this path thinking we're on it alone, even if we have partners, that we're doing this by ourselves. In reality, we can't. We're not. It might be our vision, but all of the successful entrepreneurs that I know have help, have people that provide them ideas and guidance and structure. And that might be a book, it might be a coaching program, it might be just a great mentor that causes you to take a look at that situation, that journey, just from a different angle, and allows you to open your eyes. And I think that's one of the things that I've noticed with you is that you're constantly looking for inputs from other people to see if they're seeing something different, and you're open to that. You can filter it, say, yeah, that piece is good, that you don't understand that component, but it's being open to that other perspective, I think, is what a really successful entrepreneur gets to is that they're open to looking at things from a different perspective, learning, and then filtering, right? Because that's the strength, a definition of if we look at Stoicism, it's the idea of listening to another idea, hearing it, thinking through it, and then either accepting it or dismissing it as something that doesn't work for us. Doesn't mean it's wrong and it's evil. It just means that it's not going to work for us. And I think you do that, and the more you do it, the better you get at it. Is that fair? Like the more you do something like that, the better you get at it.
I have a point of view, but I'm not like particularly as having worked significantly on the soft skill of asking questions and listening. I'm definitely far more comfortable with myself, like not needing to share it and actually like assessing in the moment, like what response serves me or them and moving from where we are to where we actually want to go. Um, but then like that means that the amount of input that I'm absorbing is extremely high.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but I'm taking time to assimilate it, and I'm back into what I think, like you said, with the filter, and then, uh, you know, hopefully I'll meander into being the leader that I want to be, where I'm actually like through that, as I understand it, I will like eventually I will actually have that skill set that like gives people confidence and allows them to feel that they have an opportunity to make an impact. I influenced them, not that they would attribute it to me or that they'll owe anything to me, but that they'll have this sense that they got better or they felt more confident in themselves, and it created an opportunity for them because they had an opportunity to like work for me or work with me.
Well, I think that's there's two things there. One, you have to you bring all this input, which we have tons of it going on now, but we got to be able to take that filter and shake it out like a pool filter sometimes. It just dump out the stuff that we don't need anymore and reset that filter. And I think you do that on a consistent basis. But we don't, as an entrepreneur, we don't need that adulation from somebody that they've grown as a person or grown as an employee. I look at it this way, and I'd love your take on it. Where if I'm working with a salesperson and they're really trying to get better, just the growth is part of my reward, right? And I don't need them to tell me this, and I don't need them to understand it, but that's the reward, to watch them go from struggling to do something to mastering it, or at least just doing a better job and being aware of it. It's a fun, rewarding aspect of being in that leadership role, and it took me a long time to realize, and we sort of touched on this in sort of the green room before we started recording. I worked for a gentleman who was super smart. We saw a lot of the things in the world the same way. I learned a ton from him. The experience sucked because of his disposition and his leadership or lack of leadership style. But it took me years to really understand. I was saying things that I learned from him a decade ago. It was useful information that I had retained. And during that process, it was a fight. So if we can get better at leading people and making that process more interesting, more fun, and more effective than what we've gone through ourselves to learn things, that makes us a better leader. So clearing that filter out and being able to share that reward. Again, we don't want the adulation, right? Because you just said that. You don't need them to come to you and say, "Hey, thank you." It's just watching that happen on your own.
Yeah, I mean, what that aspect of is my favorite part. Like what I actually feel uniquely good about. It's like it's essentially I am a very quick start, can bring things to action person, and so whenever I when I and that's something that is such an innate trait to me that it is definitely unique. And like when I can feel like someone actually feels like I met them where they are, and that they had some form of awakening that led them to like see the next thing forward. Um, where part of that input was their interaction with me. I, I kind of like I like I smile in my mind of like I actually did what I want to be doing with my time. Uh, so
Yeah, it's how we kind of we can assess how we grow, and that's the reward in and of itself, that we've had impact on people. Um, so I I think there's one other area I wanted to cover, um, and that's how you're a better salesperson than I think you give yourself credit for. Um, and that you see what it is that you do, and you do it naturally as in your role. Um, when do you agree with that or disagree with that?
mm, I think the only reasons that I knock myself as a salesperson are because of the parts of the sales process that are repetitive become uh, like I significantly procrastinate and often struggle to do, even though they're entirely necessary.
For example,
I mean, actually writing out a proposal, or, I mean, sometimes even a discovery call is something I've done so many times that am, I'm often unprepared, leaving it until the last minute, and then winging it and relying on my expertise to lead me through it with strength, despite knowing that like I didn't do kind of my diligence that I know, you know,
it would have made it easier.
guarantees success.
Yeah, I think that comes that maybe some would consider it a lack of discipline, but you can also turn that into a strength where that lack of preparation forces you to have a more conversational style when you're doing that interview with a customer or a prospect, when you're trying to get that information, because of the expertise you have, the natural ability to understand where you need to go, so you can pull that out. Maybe it takes you a little longer, maybe you feel less comfortable about it because you're not exactly sure where it's going to go, but that you have the curiosity and a little bit of skepticism to come in there and have those conversations. And that's where a
That's what
system
we're
can be.
that's what I feel like we're trying to figure out right now is that in reality what that means is like I have to delegate all of that entirely, and then like to the degree that someone's entirely responsible for the outcome, and then but I can't just go away. I have to decide, we have to intentionally decide what are those like aligned to my unique ability, right? Where like I have paid a lot of attention to what the exact tonality and words are that someone uses when I move from this company that I'm getting a quote from to someone I'm actually considering making the decision to work with for the first time.
Mm.
And and what immediate fears are going to come up from them associated with like actually making a decision away from the status quo, making their team work with a new team. Like, is my team really going to do what I've said they're going to do? I think I think I'm uniquely, you know, I'm unique in that conversation, almost like coach the client through it being okay that they've made this that their mind is switching to actually choose us. And that's something that I've seen because I mean, in the last 11 years, I mean, I have won probably 300, definitely over 300 companies that have done a first project with us that I was the one that like was
Initiated.
had the conversation.
But you said something interesting there, where you're discerning whether these people are a good fit. So this is where the 300 opportunities that came along that closed. As a salesperson, I think the mindset needs to shift, and I think it's easier for you to, because you have the vision of the 300. Not everybody is going to be a fit for what we do and the way we do it. And they're not going to change their thinking. They're not going to change their team to work with my team. And that's okay. It's perfectly fine to not bring those people into the fold because we're not going to have long-term success. So why have that struggle? And I think that's one thing that, somebody like yourself who has experience that recognizes that if we go fight for this and they're not really committed, we're not going to have long-term success because we can all get a deal. It's transactional. We can do that. But what we're not trying to do is we're trying not to be transactional. We're trying to set up relationships so we start to build that credibility and that trust and we move forward. Not that there's never problems, but it's how we handle those problems because we've established that trust. So I think that's a big part of what I was talking about, where you're more natural at that discernment of deciding that these people, based on what they're saying, are not going to be a good fit. And then it's almost like an application. Are they ready for us? Are they a good fit for us? And no, the way I was taught, no is a perfectly acceptable answer, and it's my second favorite answer from a prospect or a customer because it's clear, it's concise, and we can deal with it, right? One way or the other. It's the ones that are, I need to think about it, or maybe it's like, those are unacceptable. So I think that's a piece that you do better than some of the salespeople that you've had and have, that it's easier for you to make that decision to say they're not really qualified because you understand the ramifications.
Yeah, I mean, definitely in those, in trying to figure out what our business model actually had to be in order to meet the market, because I mean, the business was not successful when we bought it. The previous 2 years had literally lost money on the P&L, and the largest customer was 75% of the revenue. Like there was no company when Curtis and I bought it. It was like, what can we do that would actually meet the market? And unfortunately, from 2012 through 2018, I kept formulating new hypotheses of what we needed to do and who we needed to sell it to, and then going out and selling it, and then learning all the lessons the hard ways of all the reasons that wasn't actually what works for us, and really doing the work to figure out our identity and understanding the market based off of actual experience, because I didn't have the advantage of a career before I started doing this.
But
Like,
but I really think that what you just said and what you said earlier, the congruency there is so accurate, because if you go listen to somebody that is an entrepreneur and has been successful, and the one that popped into my head was Alex Hermosi, right?
yep,
Who's who screwed up more than him in the beginning of his career, right?
and nobody.
And just before he made it, he saw the end, right? I mean, it was over, and he had the right people in his life to help him see and have confidence to take the next step, and then keep after it, keep iterating, keep changing things to get to that next piece. And what people don't realize is that it took years for him to get there. He had wins along the way, and success and failures along the way, but it's a struggle, and I don't think it's very rare that somebody just comes along and hits it the first time, because I don't think those people
I
have
mean,
longevity.
the market is more complex than we could ever know, and truly being in a professional service position to customers at businesses is a very unique experience, and that you can't have until you do it. So that, yeah, I think, I mean, I have a theory, Walter, that I'm just like, we're just about to hit 7 years of owning the company, and that I'm, 7 years into becoming that 15-year overnight success. So,
Yeah, well, it's that proverbial illustration of the iceberg, right, with everything underneath it, and you only see the tip of it. And boxing is one of those things, right? Somebody comes into the ring, and they go 2 rounds and knock somebody out, and they win all this money and adulation, but and people falsely look at it like, oh, he got $140 million for 6 minutes. And it's like, did you see what he's been doing for the last 20 years? Right? I mean, just the last 12 months. It's
yeah.
it's crazy how much work that goes into being successful.
Yeah, so I like the sports analogies because they're used all the time, around like that being a boxing one. Because, but in my study of it, it's that these athletes, their their job is to train and prepare, and then their actual performance is very, very brief. And like, as the entrepreneur, your job is to perform, and unless you force yourself to train and prepare as if you're a professional athlete, like, no one will ever give you that time to go do that. And I decided that had to be different, and then that was what, like, actually got me to start making, well, the progress that I had wanted to make the whole time. It was just that I was always in the game, and I had to do it. So I mean, like, you've been, uh, you've not really ever said anything to about it, but you see, like, I take a ridiculous amount of days off work, and like, keep very strict hours, which certainly has to do with the fact that I have 3 small children, and have to figure out how to do so and so. What it is, because, like, I mean, I invest really hard in making sure that the approximately 40 hours that I'm at work, I'm like actually at peak level, where I am who I want to be. For every meeting, there's complete presence, and I want to optimize back to that. And then but in order to optimize back to it, I have to take a lot more time away than what people actually think is an appropriate amount of time.
Yeah, well, those people don't get it. because that is, Michael Gerber talks about working on the business, and when you take that time to go reflect and contemplate, and even if it's just because you never shut it off, right, dude? You never shut this completely off. It's always percolating in the back of your brain as an entrepreneur, but you allow yourself the time to either reflect on something you're working through, time with your family to be able to make those connections properly, to be wherever it is you need to be. Without that, you can't be effective. Whether it's 40 hours, 30 hours, or 60 hours,
Right.
it's irrelevant. You have to have that time to keep that balance going. You have to eat, you have to sleep, you got to refuel, and people, they take pride in like, I worked 85 hours, and and okay, but what did you literally accomplish, and what did you break, and what did you fix? And it's not about doing, it's about effectiveness. And we can't be effective if we're not clearing out our head from time to time. And sometimes you can do it. Like I was sharing that I've lost some close friends in the last couple of weeks, and one day I just, like, fuck it, and took an hour and went out into the woods and went for a walk, so I could be by myself, so I could be ready for the next meeting. If I hadn't done that and pondered and kept trying to do something, nothing would have worked. And you got to be able to give yourself a break. So I think the one thing that we didn't do, Colson, that I think we should do now is, like, talk about, you got an interesting little business, and you got a very narrow focused market. And if there's somebody out there listening to this, can you give us 30 seconds on who it is your ideal prospect is, how you help them? I had a little pressure here, but how do you help them? Because you got a business that isn't open to the whole world. I've learned that every major corporation benefits from what you do, but as another business owner, like, holy crap, I didn't know that's how that was done. And
Right.
you got some cool stuff that you're part of. I didn't understand it. So can you kind of break that down for the audience, and then kind of share what's the best way to reach out to you in the company?
So the most encompassing way to put it is that either as a strategic management ad marketing consultant, you're actually using, like, primary market research, where you're going to collect data or information from the target audience to make sure that data or their input is included in how you're going to make an impact with your recommendations on whoever you're consulting with. Or you're someone that is a, like, true researcher, that actually, whose impact is in the design and the synthesis, and actually consulting back to the company on the decisions you're going to make an impact on. And you need a team that can, I say, 10x confidence in research, recruitment, and data collection, right? So a extremely intentional process to understanding the research outcome, the company outcomes, and the customer outcomes, and actually delivering what we call our research logistics plan, and that can then, and then our team of 100 people that we have actually executes on the services to follow through on that recruitment and data collection for the research.
So I think there's a piece there that you didn't, explaining what you do is complicated, right? But you never talked about the product. You talked about what you're doing for your customer and for sometimes their customer, to get them information, right, for those outcomes and that success. And you never once talked about product as a service or any of that. What the deliverable is irrelevant. You're changing how they look at what they do and how they think about it. And
Right.
that's how you go to market. That's how it's different, and that's how you can get really large consulting firms to say, "Wow, this is different, and we should look at this, and we should work with these folks to execute on because they're working on huge organizations." I remember one time Mike was explaining to me that he was working with a company that needed information from farmers or input from farmers, and that it had to get done by a certain time frame, otherwise it wouldn't going to get done until the fall. I'm like, what, farmers? Why? What the hell would that be? And then like they go to work. They're going into planting stuff, and then they got harvesting stuff, and the complexity of what you do, the timing of what you do, right, is interesting, and I don't think people really understand what goes into those big companies thinking about how they go to market and what they need to do to bring out a product before they launch something, or how it's being perceived. You're providing a big service to not just businesses but to consumers, because the consumers are driving it.
The macro trend of being data driven in decision making and customer centric is not disappearing. And exactly right. So that the research we do, where we're actually the operations of going out and getting answers, is something that is a critical component. And with nearly half our business within the agriculture sector, right? If there's been a seed, crop protection chemical, or major piece of equipment actually like where you're going to make the capital investment and the to bring it to market, like you have to have the opinion of the supply chain and the end user being the farmer in those examples, and having those B2B audiences actually engage in like sharing their opinion and getting the answers that you need to inform the right business decision is a really big deal to get right. And it's tedious and hard, and it's complex because there's lots and lots of people involved. And you wouldn't be doing research if you already knew the answers. And so you have to start with a plan, measure yourself, report against it, iterate and solve, and like get to an end product. Yes, in time for it actually to impact the decision. Otherwise, it's of no use at all.
If somebody's going to go spend $100 million or $200 million to develop a product or change something on their widget, they damn well better be sure that it's going to be viewed from a consumer point of view, or is going to fix a need. Doesn't matter if it's a tractor or a drug or just a little thing that some consumers buy. It's a bigger deal, and even for small companies, we need to figure out, right? For like me, I can't do a lot of research on what I'm doing from a qual or quant standpoint. It's like, oh, just go spend some money and figure it out.
Right.
When we piss away $100,000 after we realize, oh, that stuff doesn't work. We got to talk to them about this. That's why we need to be a quick study. So last question as we wrap up, Colson, and I think I know the answer to this. I always ask this question, and I get answers all over the place. But does Colson have a relationship with cigars, past or present?
Mostly past, some present. I started in high school smoking Black and Milds, and smoked many of them, and then I definitely learned as I started business travel to enjoy them as I would be out. And now, in the sense of being my best possible self, I maybe have 3 or 4 cigars in any given year over the last 3 years.
Celebratory with somebody on a golf course? Uh, What's the context?
Definitely when I get together with my best friend from high school and college. And then outside of that, usually because some major milestone or achievement happened for me that I have that like wouldn't matter to anyone else. And so I
Yeah,
just sit there alone and smoke it.
yeah. Okay. That's what there's always there's usually a reason for somebody to do it when they don't do it on a regular basis, and it's always interesting. It's sometimes it's you know in collaboration just with to make a connection with people, and sometimes it's just to be go off by themselves and just enjoy what I did that nobody else gives a shit about. That's cool. It's a cool story. Appreciate it. Um, Best way to reach out to Colson and CFR? Egg Access.
Colson, Colson, is a very unique name. So Colson Steber on LinkedIn makes me very easy to find. I'm actually very active there. So you can actually learn exactly about who I am and be able to reach out to me and connect.
Connect you with conferences and stuff that all that's on the LinkedIn feed. So
Yep.
again, thanks Colson. I appreciate it. And it's been fun working with you. It's a fun conversation. Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you, Walter.